Warren has nearly 40 years of experience in venture capital, executive management, entrepreneurship, product design, and engineering. Warren is an inventor and author of 25 patents encompassing innovations in AI and other technologies. Currently, Warren is a partner of the AI Fund, a Silicon Valley-based venture studio that creates and finances 12 new AI companies every year. Previously, Warren was the founder and CEO of Thuuz, it's Thuuz, Thuuz Sports, a company that built and launched the award-winning Thuuz Real AI sports highlight platform. Prior to running Thuuz, Warren was a managing director of the Silicon Valley venture capital firm DFJ, focused on financing early-stage technology startups and startups worldwide. During his tenure at DFJ, the firm was the principal investor in many multi-billion-dollar, that's right, billion-dollar companies, including Box, Skype, Baidu, Hotmail, Tesla, and SpaceX. Warren currently resides and lives in Palo Alto, California, with his wife and 4 children, 3 of whom can now be officially designated as adult children, and a 4th child who is a sophomore in high school and left wondering why she is the only remaining child in the house. Today, Warren returns to the North Shore Senior Center to present a practical discussion of where artificial intelligence stands, where it is being applied, and where it is taking us. Let's give a big welcome to Warren Packard.
I think my dad said something like, "It is always my pleasure to introduce my son, Warren Packard." And I'm here to tell you, it has not always been his pleasure to introduce me. I think I got in trouble every now and then when I was a little younger. I perhaps am a little bit better behaved these days. So thank you for the kind introduction, Dad. I really appreciate it. I came here 2 years ago to present on AI, which for most of us at that time was the first time that artificial intelligence entered our lives, because it was not too much earlier than that ChatGPT was announced, and that we started to hear about artificial intelligence in the popular press. And because before then, artificial intelligence had been around for decades, but it had been this kind of scientific, mathematical thing, an abstraction that we didn't really know about. It didn't really affect our lives. But a couple of years ago, it did start affecting our lives. And so it was 2 years ago, I came here to present on AI and how it works and where we might be going with it. And in fact, I was here 2 years prior, so I was here in 2021 as well. And at that time, I said a few words on artificial intelligence at that time, but at that time, I gave more of a survey of technology, and I was talking more broadly about technology. So in just a few years, in just over 4 years, I went from talking about technology generally to AI specifically, but just kind of almost like, how it works. And now I'm coming back 2 years later in 2025 to talk more about AI and where it's going. And it's very clear where it's gone over the last 2 years. And its progress is nothing short of astounding. But where it's going is still a mystery to me, and it's a mystery to all of us, really, where it's going, because it's moving so fast. And that's just the reality of artificial intelligence. So this little cartoon behind me shows you, a couple folks, kind of taking a look at a curve it's a mystery curve. I'm not sure where it's going. And it says, doesn't look like a hard takeoff. Yeah, pretty normal. But yet if we back out, oh, guess my clicker is not working. Let's try to reset the clicker. See, artificial intelligence is so good, I can't progress my slides. Yeah, we'll see. Or maybe it's been let's see. This meeting is being recorded. Okay. Let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now we'll see if my clicker works. You are here. You're right at this knee in the curve or bend in the curve, and things are really taking off. And this speaks to what's going on right now with artificial intelligence, is we're kind of at this time where we know things are going to take off. We can't entirely see how it's going to take off. And we might even, to some extent, be denying that it's taking off, but it's taking off. And I wanted to revisit a point that I made probably 4 years ago, and I may have even repeated 2 years ago, and probably if I'm invited back next year or 2 years from now, I'll probably repeat it yet again. And that is Yogi Berra, of course. You guys might be familiar. It's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. But of course, that's exactly what I'm going to try to be doing here. And before I get to this curve here, I just wanted, I guess my dad said, I was incorporated in Highland Park. That's where I grew up. Somehow, my mom and my dad, created this human being rather than an AI being. But the curve I wanted to show is this curve right here, and it's full of dots and it's full of data, and you don't have to worry about all the specifics. But I'm going to point out a couple things. And again, because I presented this curve 4 years ago and 2 years ago, and now I'm doing it again, I'm probably going to call one of you up from the audience 2 years from now to present this curve. But this is a curve that a futurist named Ray Kurzweil started. But he didn't start the technology. He didn't start the dots that fill in this curve. But what is this curve? Right here, you probably can't see it, it's so small. This is 1900. So this is a time scale that starts at 1900, and it goes all the way to 2025. So very conveniently, this is the last 125 years. And what this axis is here is it's saying how much, for $1,000, how much computational power can you get? Like if you're actually going to do some kind of mechanical calculation or electrical calculation or digital calculation, if you spend $1,000, how much horsepower, compute power could you actually get? And it starts off with calculators. Like I remember in our basement of our house, my dad brought back a Frieden calculator. If you guys remember the Frieden calculators, handheld accounting machines. These are mechanical. They had all sorts of little, metal pieces that would go back and forth and make incredible calculations. And then, of course, we got into vacuum tubes and huge computers that filled rooms. Then the semiconductor revolution came on, and we got these little chips, microprocessors, and Apple made computers and IBM made computers and all that stuff. But for the last 125 years, whether it's a mechanical computing device or a vacuum tube computing device or a digital computing device, you can see that we have exponentially improved how much we could actually process for a given amount of money. And this has never stopped. And maybe there was a little pause. Well, actually, not even during wartime, because computers were used and improved quite a bit during wartime. But you can see that the orders of magnitude, it went from, this is 22 orders of magnitude of increase of power in the last 125 years. And there's no reason to think that this curve isn't going to continue to grow. That we're going to continually grow the amount of compute for a smaller and smaller amount of money. And this AI revolution is just one destination, if you will, along this curve. This curve has never stopped for 125 years. And that's the important point here, and this is a recurring theme of this talk here, is that there are always significant challenges with new technologies. There's also significant opportunities with new technologies. But whether we're concerned, and we should be, by what the future holds for us, or whether we're excited for the future by what the future holds for us, whether we're excited or fearful or anywhere in between, it's not going to stop. There's no way to stop this. This is just how things have been going. And in fact, I suspect if we went further than 125 years, we would see other different types of metrics that we could look at that just human beings just build on top of everybody's advances, because we're very creative and we love innovation and we love to make things. And this is just simply the product of making things. So this is the big point, and it's a point that, well, in fact, as I said, I made this point 4 years ago, I made it 2 years ago, I'm making it now, but I actually presented this slide, of course not to 2025, but I presented this slide in the year 2000. The same guy, Ray Kurzweil, had plotted this graph and basically said by the year 2023, for $1,000, the amount of computing power you would have would be equivalent to a human being. And it was amazing, he was correct. He was absolutely correct, and that's 25 years ago. Okay, so let's get off of what Ray Kurzweil did, and let's talk about human cognition. There's going to be a lot of pictures of brains in this presentation, but I'm going to use the study of human beings as the path through this presentation here to talk about the progress of artificial intelligence. Because artificial intelligence, if it's doing its job, is going to be simply human intelligence, but artificially creative. So the first question is, what is it about human intelligence or human cognition that we're trying to achieve with artificial intelligence? And I think it's 7 points, hopefully I get my count right. What are the points? It's memory, it's communication. And by the way, I didn't make any of this up. This is the study of human cognition. There are a bunch of smart people, much smarter than me, that figured out these 7 points of human cognition. Perception, attention. You guys are very attentive, so thank you. This is all part of human cognition. Reasoning, we're thinking individuals. Emotion. And emotion is so important, of course, because that's one of the attributes we don't necessarily assign to artificial intelligence. We don't think about artificial emotion, but we'll be talking about that. And finally, metacognition. And metacognition is this very interesting thing where we actually think about us thinking. You know, it's like that inner voice inside each of our heads where we're thinking about what we're thinking. That's a very unique trait of humans. Now, of course, many of these traits are also embodied by animals as well. But there are some traits, of course, that are uniquely human and make us who we are. So this is the pathway. The question is, how has artificial intelligence gone down this path in terms of mirroring human cognition? And so let's talk about digital cognition. And what I'm going to tell you and try to make the case for is that digital cognition is exactly the same as human cognition. And let's talk about the progress along the way. And let's start with the first two, memory and communication. And these are the easy ones because we've had digital memory and digital communication for many, many years. And of course, I put up this little photo of, I guess, teenagers using their mobile phones. But how many of you have a mobile phone in this room right now? Show of hands. There we go. So more people have mobile phones than know about the history of stand-up comedy in Chicago. But that's okay. We all have mobile phones. It's not just the teenagers who have their mobile phones. And those mobile phones, of course, they're computers. These are little handheld computers. They have memory inside. They have compute inside. In other words, it's got a processor inside. And of course, it's got communication. We're talking on the phone all the time. Maybe some of you are posting on Instagram or TikTok. I don't post on Instagram or TikTok, but my daughter, who we referred to earlier, she does. But memory and communication. So there's definitely memory and communication in digital cognition, if you will, the digital world. Okay, let's move on from there. The next is perception. Can computers see? Is there digital perception? And this is a funny little photo, but this is the question, is it a chihuahua or a muffin? That is the question that is being asked here. And if you look at this, it's actually pretty hard to tell the difference between a chihuahua and a muffin. But a computer can. And we can too. I mean, if you stare closely enough, this is a cute little chihuahua and that's a cute little muffin. Or I don't know, maybe the muffin's not quite so cute. But they do look quite a bit alike. And it took a while for computers to be able to discern the difference in a photo like this. Human beings, we can do it. Well, my eyesight's getting pretty poor, so I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to be able to do quite so bad. But in any event, computers now can do this. They're gaining this sense of perception. There's computer vision, and they can see a lot of different things. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Point number 4, attention. Do computers have attention? And this is where I'm going to get a little nerdy for just a moment. But there's a research paper that came out of Google, and it's called Attention is All You Need. So we're talking about attention. We're asking the question, do computers have attention? And it turns out this paper, this research paper that was published in 2017, actually held the foundation of ChatGPT. That the large language models that are behind the scenes in ChatGPT that do the really incredible things that it does is all based on this foundational research. Because these researchers figured out that there was this weird property that came about from these AI models. If you just gave the AI models a bit more attention, if they paid better attention to what was around them. And at this time, it was all words. It was all about words. How do you pay attention to the words around you? Because if you remember ChatGPT, in fact, most of you probably use ChatGPT when you, actually, let's show of hand. How many folks have used ChatGPT or something like it over the last 6 months? All right, it's about a third of the group here. So that's quite a bit. But you probably typed something in and asked it a question, and it responded. And it responded in a fairly reasonable human manner. And that was because it understands the words you're typing, and it understands the words it's relaying back. And when I use understands, I have to put air quotes around understand. It doesn't really understand, but it is paying attention to the words that you typed in and the words that it's putting out there. And it all comes from starting with this research paper. And so I will argue that AI does pay attention because these large language models or ChatGPT, they pay attention to the words around it. And time for some cartoons. We got to do some cartoons here. So AI turns this single bullet point into a long email so I can pretend that I write. Yeah, you can just put in, into ChatGPT, write me an email to my father thanking him for dinner last night. And I will get a whole beautifully written email that, dear Dad, the dinner was wonderful. The conversation was scintillating. The food was delicious. I can't wait for the next time you treat me to dinner. Yeah, I can turn the single bullet point into and pretend I can write. And of course, there's another part to the cartoon. AI makes a single bullet point out of this long email so I can pretend I can read. Isn't that the irony? You can go from a single bullet point to a whole email. You can go from a whole email to a single bullet point. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but these are two of the magical properties of AI. AI can embellish. You can give it one little bit of information and it'll give you a whole lot of information back. Or you can give it a lot of information and it can summarize and give you just a little bit back. So those are two of the superpowers, if you will, of AI. And that's again because it's paying attention. It can pay attention to a conversation that you have. That was a simplistic cartoon. What I want to do is show you, back to being a little nerdy for a second. There was an article that was presented in JAMA, which is the Journal of the American Medical Association. So this is a very well-respected journal. And this report, this paper came out in October of this past year, 2024, and it's called Large Language Model Influence on Diagnostic Reasoning. Sounds very sophisticated. Well, what did they do? They took a group of doctors and they split them in half. And one group of doctors was said, okay, go about your day and just make diagnoses with patients just as you normally do, and we'll see how good you are. They put them to the test. Did they make correct diagnoses? They took this other group of doctors and they said, we're going to give you ChatGPT. I don't know if it was ChatGPT, but a large language model to assist you. We're going to give you this AI assistant to help you out. And they split up the two groups of doctors and they wanted to find out, does artificial intelligence today help doctors make correct diagnoses? That was the question. That's what this paper was all about. So let's see what the results are. Results. There's blah, 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 blah. One group was 76% accurate. The other group was 74% accurate. So you give doctors AI and they were a little bit better, 2% better, but statistically, no difference. No difference whatsoever. And so very interesting. And of course, AI continues to improve, but as of October of last year, no difference. Okay, that's very interesting. And you might be like, okay, I get it, right? Doctors, they go through years of medical practice. They're the top of their class. AI couldn't possibly help them. However, this wasn't the only part of the results. There was this little sentence down at the bottom, and I'm going to highlight it now. I'm going to click. The LLM, large language model, or ChatGPT, alone, no doctor, scored 95%. What do you think about that? You give ChatGPT to a doctor, and they're no better than another doctor. But alone, it was 95, it was significantly better. And it's funny how they kind of bury this below the conclusion, like, by the way, didn't want to let you know, but AI alone is a really good doctor. And, there's reasons for this. And of course, AI doesn't have bedside manners, but AI does work 24 hours a day, and it doesn't have to take a break and doesn't play golf, which is too bad. That'd be kind of fun, right? In any event, it's an important result because, as I mentioned, AI keeps getting better and better. So this distinction will broaden over time. But also it notes that we as human beings are human beings. When we are given a tool that is a little bit better than us, because there's so much memory and that an AI has. It would be impossible for a human to have medical knowledge at all times in your brain at all times. But when we're given a tool like that, we still second guess it. We still say, I'm not sure the AI is right. And by the way, the AI is not always right. But this is a very interesting result. So I just wanted to show that we're now 2 years into this revolution with large language models, or ChatGPT, and it's pretty good, at least in this particular domain. So, by the way, I keep using this term large language models. I hope maybe that's a familiar term now, that I keep saying it's the same thing as ChatGPT. It's how we can interface with AI most easily today. And there's been a number of advances with large language models. So for instance, this term multimodal. I love it when we use terms that nobody would understand unless we defined them. What does multimodal mean? Well, let me tell you what multimodal means. The first models, the ones that came out 2 years ago, were all based on words. So you put a sentence in and you get a sentence out or a paragraph out or an email out. It was text going to text. We call these large language models. They're text to text. But multimodal models means it doesn't just have to be text. It can actually, you can have images that go in, you can have audio that goes in, you can have video that goes in, and what comes out can be text or images or video or audio. Multimodal. So you can really use AI for all sorts of different things. And this is where I'm going to try to do a demonstration, a live demonstration, which is always scary because you never know what's going to happen. Also, I'm going to try to put it near my microphone here. But I'm going to bring up Google's, they have something called AI Studio, and I'm going to use it to show you video, images, and audio all at once. We'll see if it works. So this is a large language model. I'll put down my clicker here. And let's see here. Allow it to use my camera. Allow it to use my microphone. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Hey, I was wondering, what do you see?
I see a room with many people sitting in chairs, facing towards a stage where there's a lectern and what looks like a projector. There is a partition that has been set up in the middle of the room, and the carpet appears to have a red accent. Is there anything in particular that you are wondering about?
I was wondering if I should join the North Shore Senior Center.
Based on what I see, it looks like a well-attended event at the North Shore Senior Center. Do you have any specific questions about the center or what you see that would help you decide if you should join?
Well, I was thinking about, what's that Groucho Marx quote about, I wouldn't join a club that would invite me?
Groucho Marx's quote is, "I wouldn't want to belong to any club that would have me as a member." Is there something in particular about the senior center that makes you think of that quote?
No, but thank you very much. Have a good day.
You're welcome. Have a good day as well.
All right, there we go. Hey! So that was live. That was real time. That was not pre-recorded. There was nothing other than a real-time view of the room through my phone's camera that saw you and described the room. And who was I talking to? So I was talking to a large language model. In this particular case, I was talking to Google's large language model. It happens to be called Gemini. And Gemini can see, Gemini can talk, Gemini can listen to me. And, I didn't really stress it out too much. It has a memory because I asked about that Groucho Marx quote. In fact, I did practice earlier today because I thought that was a quote from Rodney Dangerfield. And I said, hey, can you remind me of Rodney Dangerfield's quote? And Gemini responded, I don't get no respect. And I said, wait, that's not the quote. I meant Rodney Dangerfield's quote about how I wouldn't invite somebody to my, whatever. I wouldn't join any club that would invite me. And Gemini responded, that's Groucho Marx. So again, it corrected me. And this is multimodal AI in terms of, video, audio, images, text, that you could have a transcription of that so I could see what the text was. But this is part of the future of large language models, and it's here today. In fact, it's not even the future, it's here today. So what else do we have? Oh, I have this, does anybody play bananagrams? pretty fun. Okay, we've got a small group plays bananagrams. I would love to have a game of bananagrams, well, with my wife and with my daughter, but also, why not? If I need a fourth player, let's just set up my phone and have it use its camera and have it look at its tiles. Now, it doesn't have arms. You can't, you can't move the tiles around at all. But, it's not going to be very long till I can play bananagrams with my phone. And my daughter, and I don't want to cut them out. This is not to cut them out. But yeah, I want maybe another person around. Okay, what else? Recent advances. Local models. So most of the time when you interact with ChatGPT or a large language model, it's located on the internet. You're sending your text over to somewhere else, not in this building. But these AI models are getting so small, they can actually start residing on your phone itself or on your computer. And that way you don't even need an internet connection. And you don't have to worry about your information being used or seen by somebody like Google or somebody like OpenAI. You can just keep it to yourself, if you will. And that's nice, that's privacy. So our models are getting more powerful, which means that they not only get bigger, but they can get smaller and still be very effective. So this is called local models. They're local, they're on your phone, on your computer. There's also something called chain of thought reasoning. We can ask these models individual questions like, whose quote was that? And the answer is Groucho Marx's quote, or they can give me the quote. But you can also ask an LLM to, let's plan my trip to Hawaii. And then you can give it steps. I need an outbound flight. I need a hotel. I like to play golf and go swimming and go to the beach. I need a return flight. And you tell it these chain of thought, and then you can hit enter, and it'll return an entire trip for you. And because of this chain of thought reasoning, you have taught it how to think. You've taught it how to work. It's almost like you're telling, I don't know, like my high school daughter. I said, look, Elsa, I really need you to plan our Hawaii trip. Here are all the steps you should take. And she could absolutely do it. And so can a large language model do this. The interesting thing, though, about this chain of thought reasoning, and you may even be asking yourself about this right now, is why do I even have to tell the large language model what to do? Why do I even have to tell it, get me an outbound flight, get me a hotel? Maybe I have to tell it that I like to do golf and swimming as opposed to tennis and scuba diving or whatever, because the large language model wouldn't know that. But I shouldn't have to tell it everything, because its knowledge base is so deep. It should already know how to plan a trip. And if you were thinking, why do I have to tell it all these things? The answer is you don't. Because chain of thought reasoning was a big thing for about 6 months, where we had to tell the LLM everything to do. And then engineers in these companies said, okay, we're just going to make the large language model think for itself. And so it came up with reasoning models. And now, instead of having to tell large language models every step along the chain of thought, you can just give it one basic command and just say, a command, it's probably the wrong word, instruction, and it will come up with its own reasoning, its own chain of thought. And there's this new model from OpenAI, and of course, Gemini from Google has this, and Claude from Anthropic has it. There's all these companies and all these models. But OpenAI came up with O1. That's their first reasoning model. And the way you interact with a reasoning model is not to give it every instruction and not to tell it everything to do. You just say, I just want a trip to Hawaii, plan it for me. Boom, done. And you can even see its thinking. So it takes longer to get an answer out of a reasoning model because it's going to step back and think. Whereas if you use a previous model, they're faster because they just kind of, you say, give me a trip to Hawaii. It's just going to, great, I'll give you a trip to Hawaii. And it might be wrong unless you give it a chain of thought. But these new reasoning models are more thoughtful. What else? Because these models can reason, they can now be proactive. They can now help you. If they're sitting by your side, watching you do your work, They can even make suggestions for you. You don't even have to ask an AI to do things. You can have it watch what you're doing and say, wait, you just made a mistake there, or you just misspelled something. You know, those are simple things, but these AI models today can be coworkers because they're very patient. They sit by your side, they can reason, and they can say, hey, I think you're doing something incorrectly. And then, of course, you have the power to say, no, I know what I'm doing, or whatever. But in the case of physicians, as we saw before, sometimes the physician said, no, I know what I'm doing, and they were incorrect. But in any event, they can be proactive AI coworkers. And then they're now getting to the point where they can actually use the internet. They can browse. They can pull up a website. They can go and look and click around. They don't use a mouse. Again, we're not talking about mechanical arms doing anything, but they can actually browse. And with this, browsing takes place because you can do something called robotic process automation. You can basically show a AI what you're doing. It's sitting by your side. You can say, hey, look, I'm doing a bank transaction, or well, that's pretty private, I guess. Let's pick up something else. I am playing a game. I'm playing a game, and here's, watch me play the game. And the AI can watch you and then emulate what you do. And as I was thinking about this new technology, I realized that robotic process automation, where an AI is looking at what you're doing and just simply following your steps, has been around forever. And you might recognize, oh, it's a little dark, but this little guy, Mickey Mouse, he's carrying some water buckets. Anybody know what this is from? Fantasia, right. And in the middle of Fantasia is the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And of course, Mickey was the Sorcerer's Apprentice. He was sick and tired of carrying those water buckets up and down the stairs for the sorcerer. So what did he do? He trained a broomstick to do the work for him. And you can see he's holding his hands like this. He is doing robotic process automation. He is showing that broom what to do. I guess in this particular case, he was showing holding a broom, but he also was showing him how to carry, how to walk, where to go, pick up the water here, dump the water off here. And ultimately, he was very happy. And this is what we can do with AI. So back in 1940, Walt Disney already figured out that robotic process automation was going to be in our future. And I think this metaphor of talking about the Sorcerer's Apprentice is very appropriate, because something happened in the Sorcerer's Apprentice that wasn't all happy for Mickey. I think some of you might know. Mickey, well, this one broom was doing too much and he had to stop it, and he didn't know how to stop it. So he took an axe and he broke up the broom, and then the broom multiplied and started going even faster. But eventually Mickey actually he didn't get the situation under control. It was the sorcerer who got the situation under control. But after the sorcerer got the situation under control, you might not remember that Mickey, of course, he was happy and relieved, he was embarrassed, but he went and he thanked the conductor. Now, this wasn't exactly part of the cartoon, but it was immediately after that cartoon, he comes on stage, and let's see, this is the Philadelphia Philharmonic, I guess. There we go, a famous conductor. And there's a reason I'm showing this view of the conductor and how Mickey is congratulating the conductor. This is going to become very important. And it's because, what does a conductor do? A conductor conducts an orchestra. And again, in this particular case, the Philadelphia Philharmonic, the conductor walks on stage and people stand, people clap. And the concert ensues and the concert ends, and the conductor takes a bow, the orchestra takes a bow, but usually the conductor goes off stage, comes back on stage, gets another clap. Now, does the conductor play an instrument? Not really, not really. I mean, is the conductor an artist? Yes, yes. And this is where I see AI going, is that there's one current trend in AI that is above all those other trends that I just showed you. And this is called agentic AI or agents. And if you haven't heard that term yet, you will hear this term more and more. But basically, rather than working with one large language model, like I showed, scanning the room or asking a question or whatever, why, if one is good, isn't many, many more even better? Now, in the case of the Sorcerer's Apprentice, maybe not, if things get out of hand. But if you have a conductor conducting an orchestra of different agents that each play a different instrument, you get this symphony that emerges. And so I believe as the future plays out, as more of these language models, which are now video models, they're audio models, they're image models, whatever, as they proliferate and we have more and more of these and we can use them simultaneously to do things, we will no longer be the musicians, the ones playing the instruments, because we can let AI do that, but we will become the conductors. We will orchestrate these symphonies. And so that's an important point. And the reason I was talking about like the conductor gets the standing ovation, gets the clap, because that is a very human capability. Our capability to make a whole orchestra work for us and to behave, if you will, for us and to do what we want as individuals. Because every conductor is going to be different. There might be that score of music looks the same, whatever symphony it might be, but one conductor to the next, to the next, to the next, they're going to have their different nuances, their different humanity embodied in these symphonies. And they're going to let these different instruments play differently and different nuance. So this is where I believe we're going with AI, because these agents that are going to work for us and do things for us are going to be orchestrated by us. And so I'll just make this up for a second. Maybe in the future, we don't need to learn math. I'm not sure if that's the case, but we have calculators, so we don't have to add big, big numbers anymore. But maybe we don't need to learn math, but maybe that's okay, because there's going to be math agents, and there's going to be accounting agents, and there's going to be lawyer agents, and there's going to be whatever agents around there. But we'll be orchestrating them to do amazing things. And I note that I only have a few more minutes left, and there's always many, many more slides, but I want to get to Q&A here. So I'll just make a few more points, and then we can get to some Q&A. I'll talk a little bit, just run through a list really quickly. And I've already talked about AI superpowers, but so this in a way is a summary. AI can see the big picture because it's got lots of memory. It's good at summarizing. So if you don't want to read a whole big article, just add, stuff in that big article, it'll summarize it for you. It can deconstruct tasks because now we have reasoning models. So it understands getting from point A to point B might take 10, 12, 100 steps. It's really good at finding the needle in the haystack, such as, what was that quote? Was it Rodney Dangerfield? No, it was Groucho Marx. That's great. That's kind of cool. I thought about it. I didn't remember. AI found that needle in the haystack. It can process unstructured data. Like it could look at a video of this room and know that the carpet had a red accent and saw who was in front of me. It's good at guessing. You can always ask it to guess. It may not guess well, but it can guess. What else do we have here? Getting you started. It can do computer coding, and it can do lots of other things. It can shop. It can do math. Does research. Protein folding. The future of medicine is really, really quite cool. But I also wanted to spend, maybe this is an inappropriate time to end the conversation before going to QA, but maybe this is the most appropriate time to do it. Let's just talk a few moments about shortcomings of AI, because it's It's not perfect. It's non-deterministic. That means it's every time you use AI and ask it a question, it can give you a different answer. Now, it might give you the right answer every time, but it's going to be a little bit different. It's because it's not exact. Like computers in the past have always been, you ask it a question, it gives you the same answer over and over and over and over again. That's not the case with AI. It can be hallucinogenic. It can make things up. You can ask it a question, you say, what was the research paper by Donald Packard in 1927? And it'll say, oh, Donald Packard, he wrote the paper on nuclear fission, and anyway, my dad's not that old, just thanks. It's immature. It's still very young. It's growing up, but it's still young, and so we're still working out the kinks. And it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to bad actors. And who are those bad actors? Those human beings. I mean, you can ask an AI certain questions that may elicit inappropriate answers. Now, most AI technologies have what we call guardrails. So they prevent it from getting outside the bounds. But every now and then it can, and it has in some interesting ways. And I'll make this the final point. All these things, pretty much like us, right? Human beings, non-deterministic. We don't always say the same thing when you ask us the same question. We can be hallucinogenic. We can make things up. We're good at storytelling. We're all immature. You guys are a little bit more mature than I am. And we're vulnerable as human beings. And actually, I'll end with this. We all have to pay very careful attention to email we receive, text messages we get, voices we hear, video, images. Unfortunately, because of a few bad actors, AI can be used to deceive us. And it's just important to note it's getting better and better. And so we need to all be on our guard about, am I really talking to my son, Warren? Or is this really the bank that's calling or whatever? It's part of our future. Anyway, I will end there so we can go to Q&A. I suspect there might be a few questions that folks have.
Wonderful, Warren. Thank you. Arnie will take questions from our audience. We also have 54 on Zoom, and there'll be some questions from there too.
Great.
Hi, my name is Rich. You use the metaphor of the orchestra and that each instrument has its own flavor, distinctive character. I don't quite understand how agents are you implying that there will be many different kinds of AIs specialized to law, specialized to chemistry? Was that the metaphor? I didn't quite catch it.
Thank you for asking. The answer is yes, you got that exactly right. In fact, you can just tell a large language model, in fact, it's called a prompt. The information you feed into the large language model to get an answer is called a prompt. And you can start the prompt by saying, you are an expert lawyer. And it'll actually, the large language model will be, okay, I'm an expert lawyer now. Or you are an expert salesperson, or you're an expert whatever. You can start off your prompt, and then you can ask your question. And in fact, if you say, you're an expert lawyer, tell me how best to hit a curveball by a baseball player, it'll actually give you this kind of silly answer because you're not an expert baseball coach. But if you say, I'm an expert baseball coach, it'll give you a really great answer to that. So you can kind of set the tone. So one of the ways you can use agents, for instance, let's say you wanted a group of agents to create a movie. You could create one producer, one director, one graphic designer, one art, and they're all specialists in your field, and they can conduct a conversation amongst themselves even. There's no reason the conversation from a large language model has to go from a human to an AI and back again. It can be a conversation amongst AI to AI to AI to AI, and the human in there going, okay, great, good. And now you can see you're a conductor because they can just go off on their own. You want to give them a endpoint or a stopping condition, or you can just tell them, stop, you're done. But thank you for asking the clarifying question.
In the doctor model with the experiment, in the medical experiment, the doctors who were in the AI group were only 2% better than the other ones.
That's right.
Didn't they use AI? Because then AI was better than all of them. So isn't the point of the doctor in that group, isn't the point of the doctor using AI to get answers and diagnoses?
That's right. And so what was going on is that the doctors were using the AI, but then the doctors second guessed the AI and said, oh, I don't think you're correct. And that's what led to the lower score. And that's kind of the interesting thing. Again, it's kind of like the human foible of, and again, the AI was incorrect 5% of the time, so it was not always correct. But the physicians were more incorrect, especially when they were second guessing. So it's just ironic how that worked out. I guess I'm following the microphone around.
Yes, my name is Jim Marin. I would ask, how would this operate with propaganda? You know, we have propaganda and it's deceiving.
Yes. So the question was, how can AI be used for propaganda, for negative purposes? Propaganda, it's used as a pejorative. So I'll take the question as pejorative. AI can definitely be used for propaganda. If you ask it to have a point of view and you give it a direction and you say, I want you to analyze this story from the perspective of whatever, I'll make it very neutral. And like there was a fire that broke out in a barn. Please analyze this story from the perspective of the cow. And AI will analyze this story from the perspective of the cow. And that might be cow propaganda. And it would be compelling or cowpelling. Thank you very much. Yes, humans can use AI for so many different things. And unfortunately, some of those things can be not so great. Yes.
You gave us a lot of information about how far AI has come and very little information, although you did mention guardrails. So how do you see the future of the development of guardrails to protect against the nefarious uses of AI?
Yeah, so I think and there are more slides here, but I'll make two points. Number one is the good news is that there are few bad actors. There are many, many good actors. And the many good actors include the engineers and the business people that are creating these AIs. They care deeply about AI's impact on society. And there are large groups in all of these companies to test the AI, to put in these guardrails, to make sure that it doesn't get outside the guardrails. In fact, there's even employees at these companies that train and adjust the personality of these large language models. So as I mentioned earlier, you can tell a large language model, you're an expert lawyer or you're a baseball coach. But those coaches and lawyers, they have personalities. And so there's a default personality with all these language models. And they pay careful attention to that. So where are we going in the future? We're going three things. Super intelligence, because AI will, in a way, I'm going to say it will know all. It won't know all. It'll know a lot. It's smarter than all of us. Also, what I call super sentience. It's a weird word. I think I may have made it up, but it's going to be incredibly aware. Like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where the brooms were just methodically going and filling up the room. Well, honestly, a large language model will know, I'm filling up the room with water. And it will know this is not normal because it is very much aware of all these different things that are going on around it. It's not single purpose. Now, can you make it single purposed and focus? Yes, you can. A bad actor could do that. But in general, Large language models are aware. The third area, so super intelligence, super sentience, the third area is super robotics. We eventually will have AI become physical, and robotics will become incredibly good at doing physical acts. So anyway, that's some of the future.
Yeah, hi. It's working? Okay. I have a question for you in terms of learning and education. My son's a college teacher, and he's realized that the quality of his papers that he's receiving are extreme for students that don't have those capabilities. Well, they're finding that the kids are starting to use AI for their papers.
Yes.
You know, it's not even plagiarism now because they have to define the source of that, you know, where they got that information. Now they're getting these, you know, he's complained back to the student that there's no references here. Where's your information? Where you got this information? And
Yeah.
it's going back and forth.
So that another slide that I could get to, but I'll explain now. When it comes to education, I do believe our educational system will need to change. With the future of work is going to need to change as well. But essentially, I know that the immediate reaction of schools, especially like with my daughter and a son who's still in high school, they're like, don't use AI. And to be candid, I'm like, use AI, please, because that is the future. Now, you still have to be a critical thinker. And we still need to test for critical thinking because you need to be that conductor. You need to, and that conductor knows so much about music. Just like that, the students need to know so much about the topic that they may have assistants working on with AI. And so you might not be able to accept a paper prima facie and just say that's your paper because it's going to be partly written by AI. But all our students and everybody here, you have to read that paper that it produced for you. You have to edit that paper because it's not going to be, for high school students, maybe it's better than what they can write. But in general, you want to add your personality to that, your flavor. And so the way we test students needs to change, but I'm all for they need to use AI. That is our future.
Warren, in the interest of time, I'm going to apologize to most of the people. We're going to just take two more questions. Here's the first.
Thank you. Warren, it was phenomenal. Thank you. Even better than last year. Question regarding our approach to AI, gently, it's like stepping into a pool, very gently. Can you recommend a source where we would start out at very gently?
Yes. I guess the easiest, simplest answer would be to say, download ChatGPT. Download it to your phone. There's an application on your computer you can use. You can also go to the website. It's by a company called OpenAI. And just once a day, just ask it a question. It can be a whimsical question. Who made that quote in that movie? Or just ask it a question and just, in fact, thank you for asking this question because I encourage all of you to use AI every day. And just once a day. And the more I did, my wife, she asked me about because I'm in AI all the time. She asked me about this. How do I do this? And so I said, download ChatGPT, use ChatGPT every day, once a day. And she's a physician. And she now uses it multiple times a day. And it was eye-opening to her. She's like, this is really helpful. But remember, always read the answers from ChatGPT and make sure you're using your own judgment as to whether that's a good answer or not. I think most often you'll find these are very good answers.
Warren, wonderful presentation and many more questions, maybe during pizza time.
Pizza time. We'll do pizza time questions.
Last question. Should there be another bullet up there called bias? And,
yes.
And if bias is there, is it because it's paying attention? And if it's paying attention, is it paying attention to one group more than another group? And might be within that group more younger people than older people, more liberals than conservatives. I lead discussion groups where the conservatives are convinced it's all BS. And the liberals will say, because it's truth and you guys don't believe in it. But we know that we're divided, yet it's a machine. Can
That's
it be
right.
biased?
Absolutely, yes. And in fact, I'm going to modify that slide to put bias in there because that is absolutely correct. The AI is, today at least, is trained on the wealth of information that's out there in the internet. And there's a bias on the internet. And so it's certainly exposed to every perspective that's out there because the internet has every perspective out there. But to your point, it has some perspectives more than others. And that training that it has undergone, you can't immediately unbias it, if you will. But over time, that can be smoothed out. And it comes back to us as human beings. Because ultimately, we're training the AI, and therefore the human beings training it are going to insert their bias into these systems. And we're going to need to come to some kind, it's called alignment. We're going to need to come to alignment with AI so that we're all comfortable. The challenge, though, is that all of us as human beings are different. And so how do you align? To whom do you align? To what principle do you align? To what standard do you align? And I definitely I can't answer that question. It's a very challenging question, but it is a question that's outstanding. And all we can say is there's many, many good actors and engineers and individuals who are trying to think through those things so that we reduce bias as much as possible and allow us to be the best humans that we can be.
Warren will just let a proud father say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.